The research station Orion's Rest floated in the cold silence of space. Its white metal walls shone under the light of a distant sun. Inside, the air was filled with the hum of machinery, the soft hiss of air filters, and the occasional murmur of crew members walking through the corridors. Rian, a young human technician, worked alone in one of the lower maintenance bays. He wore a gray work suit with small oil stains on the sleeves. His hands were steady as he fixed a power relay panel. The panel had been flickering for days, and it was his job to make sure it would run smoothly again. The maintenance bay was quiet except for the sound of his tools clicking. In the faint buzz of electricity, Rian was focused, his mind running through the steps needed to repair the system. But then, he heard something unusual, light, quick footsteps coming from the hallway behind him. He turned his head slightly, expecting to see another human crew member. Instead, standing in the doorway was someone he had never met before. She was taller than an average human, with smooth silver-blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the bay's lights. Her hair was short and pale, almost like soft white threads. But the most striking feature was her tail, long, striped in silver and blue. And moving slowly behind her like a ribbon in a soft wind, Rian straightened, surprised. He knew she was not human. From the station's data logs, he guessed she might be Phileri, a species known for their agility and sharp senses. But Phileri rarely worked on human stations, so seeing one here was a rare event. The alien girl's bright, curious eyes scanned the room. She stepped forward and spoke in clear, standard galactic, though her voice had a faint musical tone. "Are you fixing the relay?" "Yes," Rian replied, nodding. "It keeps cutting power to the docking sensors. I'm trying to get it stable." She moved closer, her steps light, as if she barely touched the floor. Her tail swayed gently. Left to right, in slow arcs, she crouched near the relay but did not touch it. "I am Liron. I am a science apprentice assigned to study human engineering systems." Rian set his tool aside for a moment. "I'm Rian. I work here in maintenance. You're welcome to watch, but be careful. Some of these wires are live." Liron tilted her head, observing the tools he was using. Her eyes followed his hands closely as he connected a thin cable. The tail behind her moved again, this time with a smoother, more flowing motion. Rian found himself glancing at it without thinking. He had never seen a tail move like that before. They worked in silence for a few minutes. Rian focused on the relay, but he could feel Loran's attention on every step. She asked questions in short bursts. "What does that part do? Why is this cable thicker? Why do humans use copper instead of alloy?" Her curiosity was endless, and Rian found it strangely pleasant. Many new crew members were shy or spoke only when necessary. But Liron wanted to know everything. Her tale seemed to match her tone. Sometimes slow when she was thinking, sometimes quicker when she got excited. When the relay hummed back to life and the lights above steadied, Rian wiped his hands on a cloth. "That should keep it working for a while," he said. Loran's ears twitched slightly, small, pointed shapes that rose from her head, and her tail lifted a little higher. She gave a soft sound that might have been a laugh. "Your repairs are fast. I thought it would take longer." Rian smiled faintly. "Practice. I've been fixing things since I was a kid." She stepped back toward the doorway but paused. "I will come again to see your work. It is interesting." And just like that, she left, her tail making one last slow wave before disappearing round the corner. Rian stood there for a moment, thinking. He had met dozens of alien crew members during his time on Orion's Rest, but something about Liron stayed in his mind. It was not just her appearance, but the way her tail seemed to move in patterns that matched her voice, her questions. In her mood, he told himself it was just natural for her kind. Still, he wondered if it meant something more. The next day, Rian returned to his usual tasks, but he kept half an ear open for light footsteps in the corridor. Sure enough, by midday, Liron appeared again, holding a small datapad. She watched him work from a safe distance at first, then moved closer. This time, she didn't just ask questions about the tools. She asked about the station itself. Why do humans keep the lights so bright? Why do you use so much metal in the walls? Why do your machines make more noise than ours? Rian answered each question patiently. Humans like brighter light. So we can see clearly. Metal is strong and easy for us to shape. And as for the noise, that's just the way our designs work. While they spoke, Rian noticed something again. When she was curious, her tail swayed in a calm rhythm. When she was thinking, the tip twitched slightly, as if tapping to a silent beat. And when she seemed pleased with an answer, the tail curled upward just a little dot. By the time his shift ended, Rian was certain the movements were not random. But he kept the thought to himself, not wanting to offend her by asking something too personal. Over the next few days, their brief meetings continued. Sometimes she brought tools from her lab to compare with his. Other times she simply stood nearby, quietly observing. The tail was always in motion, slow, quick, curled, straight, changing with the flow of conversation. One afternoon, as they were talking about different ways to insulate wires, a loud crash echoed from the corridor. Rian turned quickly, but it was only a drop supply crate. Still, Loran's reaction caught his eye. Her tail puffed outward, the fur, or what looked like fur, standing on end. She didn't look afraid, but the sudden change was clear. He almost asked about it then, but she quickly smoothed her tail back down and returned to the topic as if nothing had happened. When she left that day, Rian leaned back against the workbench. He felt he was missing an important piece of understanding. The tail was more than balance or style. It was like a living signal, speaking in a language he did not yet know. He decided that one day, he would find out exactly what it meant. The next morning, the Orion's rest station was quiet. A soft hum from the engines filled the hallways, and the lights were steady. Rian walked toward the maintenance bay carrying a small box of parts. His shift had just begun, and he was ready to work. As he stepped inside, he was not surprised to see Liran already there. She was sitting on a small crate, holding a metallic tool he did not recognize. Her tail rested on the floor, the tip slowly moving in a half circle. "You start early," Rian said, placing the box on the table. "I like to see your work before my own shift begins," she replied. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were bright. With interest, she held up the tool in her hands. "This is from my lab. It is for measuring small magnetic fields. Do humans use anything like this?" Rian took it and turned it over. "Not exactly, but we have similar devices. Ours look different, though your design is lighter." She nodded and leaned forward slightly, as he explained how humans usually check for magnetic interference. The tail behind her began to sway in a smoother rhythm, almost like it was matching the tone of his voice. Rian could not help but notice. When he picked up a heavy cable coil from the shelf, she stood and stepped closer. "You move with no problem while carrying that," she observed. "Humans are strong for your size." Rian gave a small shrug. "It's just training. We work with heavy parts all the time." She tilted her head in thought. The tail slowed to a near stop. "In my species, balance is important, strength comes second. We can climb well, but we do not lift much weight." That small comment made Rian think about how her tail always moved to keep her steady. He began to wonder if each species naturally developed habits that matched their abilities. But for Liran, the tail seemed to be more than just balance while he worked on a wiring panel. She walked around the room, looking at his tools. When she found a strange-shaped wrench, she picked it up. "What does this do?" Rian turned to her. "That's for tightening circular bolts." "Try it." She placed it around a bolt on a spare machine part and turned. Her tail lifted slightly, curling forward, almost like it was reaching toward the bolt too. The motion was quick. Then it relaxed again. "You like learning new tools?" Rian asked. "Yes." She answered without hesitation. "It is exciting to see how other species solve problems." Exciting. The word matched what he saw. The tail's quick lift, another small clue. Later that day, they walked together toward the cargo section. Rian needed to check a storage unit that had a faulty sensor, and Liran asked to join him. The station's wide hallway was busy with crew members of different species moving in both directions. Rian noticed Liran walk with quiet, almost soundless steps, even on metal floors. Her tail swayed behind her, not too fast, not too slow, a calm pace. But when a group of tall, bird-like alien workers passed, the tail stiffened for a moment before relaxing again. "You know them?" Rian asked. "No," she said. "But they move fast. My tail reacts to movement near me. So it's like a warning." He guessed. "Yes, but not only warning," she replied. "It reacts to many things." Her answer was short, but it confirmed his thought. The tail responded to feelings and surroundings. In the cargo section, they found the storage unit with the broken sensor. Rian opened the control panel and began testing the wires. Liran crouched beside him, holding her magnetic field tool. "This wire is damaged," she said, pointing to a thin black cable. Rian checked it with his own tester and nodded. "You're right, we'll replace it." As they worked side by side, he saw her tail curl slightly every time she found a damaged part. The curl would relax when the repair was done. He realized it was like a silent signal of satisfaction. "You fixed things." "In your lab?" Rian asked while tightening a bolt. "Sometimes. We work with sensors, scanning equipment, and sample containers. If something breaks, I try to repair it before asking the senior scientists." Her tail moved in a gentle wave as she spoke. Rian was starting to think he could guess her mood just by watching it. When they finished, they walked back through the corridor. The station's artificial night cycle was starting, and the lights dimmed slightly. Crew members thinned out, leaving the hall quieter. "I think your tail tells me more than your words sometimes," Rian said after a pause. She glanced at him with a curious expression. "What do you mean?" "It changes all the time. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes fast, sometimes it curls, sometimes it stiffens. I'm starting to notice patterns." Liran gave a small sound, almost like laughter. "You're observant. Not many humans see it so quickly. Some think it is random movement." "Is it not random?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, it shows what I feel. But only my species can read every detail. You might understand some, but not all." Rian smiled. "Then I'll keep learning." Her tail swayed in a smoother, higher arc as she walked beside him. He could not be sure, but it felt like that motion meant she was pleased. The next day, Rian was repairing a temperature regulator in one of the smaller labs when Liran entered. She was carrying a tray with small glowing containers, some kind of samples from her work. She placed them carefully on a counter before joining him. "Your machines are very loud," she said, leaning slightly toward the regulator. "They work better when they can push air fast." "That makes noise," Rian explained. She crouched too. "Watch his hands." The tail behind her twitched lightly every few seconds. "In my home, most machines are quiet. Too much noise makes it hard to focus." Rian adjusted the regulator's dial and tested it again. The hum grew softer. "Better." She tilted her head and smiled slightly. "Yes." The tail's twitching stopped, replaced by a smooth, slow sway. Another clue, Rian thought. Calmness made the tail move gently. By the end of the week, Rian had learned several things without asking directly. A high lift meant excitement. A curl around the legs meant concern or thought. A stiff tail was alertness. A gentle sway was calm or comfort. But he had not yet seen what happiness looked like. That thought stayed in his mind as he watched her leave the lab. She walked lightly, tail swaying behind her in a relaxed way. But he knew it was not the full expression of joy. He decided that sooner or later he would see it for himself. The artificial day cycle had just begun on Orion's Rest. The lights in the corridors brightened slowly, and the usual sound of machinery filled the air. Rian was in the maintenance bay, sorting a set of repaired tools back into their storage cases. It felt like it would be an ordinary day. He was halfway through cleaning a cooling fan when a sharp alarm echoed through the station. The noise was loud and urgent, followed by the clear voice of the station's automated system. "Warning, hull breach detected. Section 7, sealing in progress." Rian froze for a second before grabbing his toolkit. A hull breach could mean serious damage. If the seal failed, it could pull air and anyone nearby into space. He checked his wrist communicator. Section 7 was not far, 2 corridors away from his location. Just as he reached the door, Liran appeared from the opposite hallway. She was holding a small scanning device, her tail held stiff and straight behind her. Her ears were slightly forward, showing alertness. "You heard the alarm?" Rian asked quickly. "Yes," she replied. "My lab is near Section 7. I came to help." They didn't waste time. Rian led the way, moving fast but steady. The station's emergency lights flashed red along the floor. As they ran, crew members cleared the corridors or sealed doors behind them. When they reached Section 7, the blast doors were already closed, sealing off the damaged area. A small control terminal nearby showed a breach in an outer maintenance chamber. The pressure inside was low but stable for the moment. Rian opened the panel on the terminal and connected his toolkit's diagnostic cable. "The auto seal is holding, but the pressure will drop if we don't fix the backup system," he said. Liron crouched beside him, scanning the wall with her device. Her tail stayed rigid, the tip only twitching slightly. "I detect a crack in the outer panel. It is small but still dangerous." "Then we patch it now," Rian replied. They moved to a nearby access hatch that led to the inner side of the damaged chamber. Emergency protocols kept the air thin but breathable, so they didn't need full suits, only light helmets with clear shields inside. The damage was visible, a thin line of light where the outer hull had been pierced. It was not large, but in space, even the smallest opening was dangerous. Frost crystals formed around the crack as the cold vacuum pulled heat away. Rian took out a sealant patch from his kit. "I'll hold the patch. You scan for any secondary leaks." Liron nodded and moved to the side, her tail following her every step. She was focused, the tail still stiff as she scanned the walls. Rian pressed the patch over the crack, activating the seal. A faint hiss stopped, replaced by silence. "Primary breach sealed," he said, checking his readout. Liron returned to his side. "No secondary leaks detected, but the chamber temperature is dropping fast. We should restore heat before it affects the equipment here." Rian moved to the control box on the wall. The power to the heating system had shut down automatically. When the breach occurred, he pulled out the burnt fuse and replaced it with a spare from his kit. The heating unit hummed back to life, warm air slowly spreading through the chamber. Her tail relaxed slightly now, lowering from its stiff position. "That should prevent further damage to this section," she said. Before leaving, they double-checked the seal and power systems. The station's main AI announced over the speakers. "Hull breach in Section 7 contained. Normal conditions resuming." Rian removed his helmet and let out a slow breath. That was close. Liron also removed her helmet, brushing a strand of pale hair from her face. "Your repairs were quick. You stayed calm. I've had training for situations like this," he said. Then paused. "Your scans made the repair easier. Without them, we might have missed the secondary checks." She tilted her head slightly. The tail behind her moved from a low position to a slow sway. "It is good to work with someone who moves fast and thinks clearly." Rian noticed the change in her tail. It was no longer stiff, but it wasn't the playful movement he had seen before. It seemed like a sign of relief, though he couldn't be sure. On their way back through the corridor, they passed groups of crew members talking about the breach. Some looked nervous, others relieved. The flashing red lights were gone, replaced by the steady white glow of normal operations. They stopped at a small observation window where the stars were visible. Beyond the station's structure, the breach area was somewhere on the far side. Rian stood silently for a moment, looking at the endless dark. "You did not seem afraid," he said finally, glancing at her. "I was alert," she replied. "Fear and alertness are not the same. My tail shows the difference. When it is stiff and straight, I am focused. Fear would make it move in short, sharp motions instead." Rian nodded slowly, remembering how rigid her tail had been when they first arrived at the breach. "Then I saw it relax when we finished. That was relief, wasn't it?" "Yes," she confirmed. "It lowered because the danger was over." Back in the maintenance bay, Rian set his toolkit down and began checking the tools for any damage from the emergency. Liron stood nearby, still holding her scanner. "I think I'm starting to understand your tail's language," he said. "At least a little." She gave a soft smile. "You notice details others do not." Most humans look only at the face for emotions. You look at more than that. It helps when someone has a tail. That moves like it's speaking, Rian replied. Her tail gave a small upward curl before swaying. Again, perhaps one day you will know all the meanings. But not yet. Rian raised an eyebrow. Is that a challenge? Maybe, she said, turning toward the door. We will see how much you learn. And with that, she left, her tail moving. In a smooth rhythm that seemed lighter than when she had entered, Rian watched her go, thinking about the strange mix of signals he had seen during the emergency. He now knew what alertness looked like and what relief looked like. But the one he was most curious about, happiness, remained unseen. He decided he would wait for the right moment. It would come. And when it did, he would recognize it instantly. The days after the breach passed without further emergencies. The station returned to its normal hum of activity, with crew members moving between work shifts and small conversations echoing through the hallways. Rian found himself looking forward to seeing Liran each day. She still visited his maintenance bay, sometimes bringing tools from her lab, sometimes just standing nearby while he worked. And every time, he noticed the tail, sometimes calm, sometimes quick, sometimes curling, and thought, one afternoon, the station's mess hall was quieter than usual. The long tables held only a few scattered crew members eating or talking. The air smelled faintly of warm bread and spiced soup from the auto kitchen. Rian was sitting at the end of one table, a tray in front of him. He was halfway through his meal when he saw Liran enter. She carried a small container, the pale steam curling from the top. Her eyes scanned the room until she spotted him. Without hesitation, she walked over and sat across from him. You do not often come here at this time, she said. My schedule shifted today, Rian replied. I finished my repairs early, so I thought I'd eat now. She opened her container and took a slow sip of the warm drink inside. Her tail rested lightly on the floor, moving just enough to keep balance. Rian watched it for a moment before deciding it was time to ask the question that had been sitting in his mind for days. Liran, he began, keeping his tone casual. Does your tail always move when you feel something? She looked at him for a long moment, as if measuring his seriousness. Then her ears tilted slightly forward, a sign of curiosity in her kind. Yes, she said at last. It is natural for us. Our tail is part of our expression. It is connected to our emotions. We cannot hide it, even if we wish to. Rian leaned back slightly, processing that. So it's not just balance or habit. It's like the signal. She gave a slow nod. It is more than a signal. It is a part of who we are. My people can read the smallest changes in movement, the smallest shift in position, and know exactly how someone feels. But to other species, it may look like random motion. I don't think it's random. Rian said quickly, I've been paying attention. I've seen what it looks like when you're curious, or alert, or relieved. Her tail flicked upward once, then returned to its resting position. Then you see more than most. Still, there are meanings you will not yet understand. Rian smiled faintly. What about happy? What does happy look like? Liran set her container down and studied him. Happy is not something I can describe. In words you would understand. You will know it when you see it. That's not much of an answer. Rian said, half amused. It is the only answer I will give for now, she replied calmly. Her tail swayed in a slow arc, as if marking the end of the subject, for a few minutes. They ate in silence. Round them, the mess hall's soft background noise continued. The low hum of conversation, the distant clink of dishes being stacked. Rian found himself thinking about what she had said. If happy was something he had to see, then it must be very different from the other emotions he had already noticed. It made him curious, and a little determined to spot it one day. When they finished their meal, they left the mess hall together. The station's corridors were calm, the white lights steady above. Liran walked with her usual quiet steps, tail moving in a relaxed rhythm. As they approached the lift, a group of young cadets passed by, carrying a large crate. One of them stumbled slightly, and the crate tilted. Without thinking, Liran reached out to steady it, her tail lifting high for a brief moment before settling again. Rian caught the movement and smiled. That looked like a reaction. It was, she confirmed. Helping someone often makes my tail rise quickly. It is a mix of focus and a light feeling. Light feeling? He asked. Not happiness, she said, stepping into the lift, but close. The next day, Rian was assigned to recalibrate the air pressure controls in a small greenhouse chamber on the far side of the station. The chamber held plants from several planets, each growing in carefully controlled conditions. When he arrived, he found Liron already there, scanning a set of water pipes for leaks. Your work brings you here today, she asked without looking up. Yeah, Rian replied. Pressure controls are showing uneven readings. I'm here to fix that. They worked side by side for over an hour. Rian adjusted valves and tested sensors while Liron monitored environmental readings. The tail behind her moved in a smooth, even rhythm for most of the time. At one point, he accidentally dropped a small sensor into a shallow tank of water. Liron reacted instantly, reaching in and retrieving it before it sank to deep. Her tail puffed outward for a second, then returned to normal. That was fast, Rian said. Taking the sensor from her startled reaction, she explained simply. It fades quickly when the danger is small, when the repairs were complete. They stepped outside the greenhouse, through a nearby viewport. The endless stars stretched in every direction, the deep black of space dotted with light. Liron paused by the glass, her eyes following the slow drift of a small asteroid far in the distance. The tail swayed in a way Rian could not quite place, graceful, almost rhythmic, like a slow dance. Is that something? He asked quietly. Contentment, she said without turning. It is when the mind is calm and the heart is steady. Rian nodded, committing the image to memory. It was another piece of the puzzle, but still not the one he was looking for. Happiness remained out of reach. Back in the maintenance bay later that evening, Rian sat at his workbench, thinking. He now understood that Loran's tale was more than just a habit. It was a language without words. But unlike any language he had learned before, there was no manual, no dictionary. It had to be learned by watching, by paying attention to the smallest details. As he put away his tools, he decided he would not ask about Happy again. If she was right, he would know it when it happened, and when it did, it would mean more than any description she could give. What he didn't know was that the moment was coming sooner than he expected. The sun had set, leaving the sky painted in deep blue and purple. Small lights from the human camp flickered in the distance. Rian walked toward the central meeting tent with Leora by his side. The alien girl's tail swayed slowly behind her, the tip curling and uncurling in a steady rhythm. It was a sign of calm, but Rian could sense she was holding back her true emotions. Tonight's meeting was not just another discussion. Leaders from both species would be there, along with scouts who had recently returned with troubling news. Strange machines had been seen near the border of the valley, machines that neither humans nor Leora's people recognized. They moved, slowly, but left strange marks on the ground. When Rian and Leora stepped into the tent, all conversation stopped for a moment. Human officers sat on one side, the tall alien warriors on the other. Their eyes met across the table, but there was no hostility, only the weight of shared concern. Captain Doran, the human leader, nodded at Rian. You and Leora will speak first. You've both been in the valley more than anyone. Tell us what you saw. Rian glanced at Leora. Her ears twitched slightly, a sign she was listening carefully. We saw four machines, Rian said, each about the size of a small house. They moved without sound. They were not digging or cutting trees, but they were mapping the land, scanning it with light. They were not made by my people, Leora added firmly. Her tail was now moving faster, betraying her unease. And if they are not yours, then they belong to someone else who walks under neither flag. Murmurs spread across the tent. The alien leader, Elder Varen, raised a hand. If a third presence is here, we must know their intent before they act. Captain Doran frowned. We can't risk direct contact until we understand them better. If they are hostile, they could have technology far beyond ours. The discussion continued. Voices calm but edged with tension. Plans were made for a joint scouting mission, one human team, one alien team, working together. Rian and Lior volunteered at once. After the meeting, the two walked out into the cool night air. The stars above shone like silver dust, and the distant hills were dark shapes against the horizon. Lior stopped and looked at Rian. "You trust me enough to walk into danger with me?" she asked quietly. Rian smiled faintly. "I've already done that many times. Besides, I think your tail will warn me before trouble comes." Her tail flicked sharply upward in surprise, then curled in amusement. "Perhaps it will," she said. For the first time that night, she looked genuinely at ease. The next morning, preparations began. Rian packed his survival kit while Leora checked her curved blade and her small scanner. They moved quickly, knowing time mattered. The machines in the valley might still be there, or they might already have moved deeper into the mountains. By midday, the joint scouting party was ready. 6 humans, 6 aliens, moving together into lines. The air was filled with the sounds of boots and clawed feet stepping over dry leaves. They crossed the river, its cold water biting at their ankles, and entered the shadow of the hills. Leora kept close to Rian, her eyes scanning every ridge. She moved like someone who could feel the heartbeat of the land itself. Rian admired her skill, but he also noticed something else. Her tail was twitching in short, sharp movements. It was not fear. It was alertness, the kind a hunter has when sensing prey. "Something is near," she whispered. The group slowed. Ahead, between the rocks, faint blue light shimmered. Rian crouched, peering through a narrow gap. There it was, one of the strange machines. It stood on 3 legs, its round body rotating slowly, panels on its surface open and closed, sending thin beams of light across the ground. But there was more. A figure moved beside the machine, tall, thin, with an armor-like shell that gleamed faintly under the light. It was not human, and it was not one of Leora's people. The group exchanged silent looks. This was the third presence they had feared. Before they could decide their next move, the figure turned its head sharply, as if it had heard something. The machine's lights focused on the rocks where Rian and Leora hid. The beams grew brighter. Scanning the air. "Fall back," whispered Captain Doran from behind. But it was too late. The machine emitted a sharp, rising sound, and the alien figure raised a strange device. Rian grabbed Leora's arm and pulled her behind a large stone. As a flash of light struck the spot they had just been standing, the ground hissed and smoked where the beam had hit. The peaceful scouting mission had just turned into a dangerous encounter. The unknown visitors were not here to talk. Leora's tail lashed side to side, a clear sign of battle readiness. Rian felt his own pulse quicken. The valley was no longer just a shared land between two peoples. It had become a battlefield neither side had prepared for. They would have to work together more than ever if they wanted to survive what was coming. Next, the night over the alien city was alive with lights. Small drones moved like fireflies between the towers, their paths forming shifting patterns in the darkness. Rian stood on a balcony, looking over the city while the warm wind brushed against his face. Beside him, Lura leaned on the railing, her tail curling slowly in a relaxed motion. It was one of those rare moments when neither of them had to speak to understand what the other felt. The mission had taken a new turn. The stolen crystal core was still missing, and the attackers who had damaged the research station had vanished without leaving much trace. But a few hours ago, the city's central watch detected a strange signal in the upper atmosphere. It was not local, and it was not from Earth. The signal carried a repeating pulse, too precise to be natural. Lura looked at Rian with calm eyes. "They are calling someone," she said. "Maybe more of them are coming." Her tail flicked from side to side, showing concern. Rian rested his hands on the railing. "If they bring more ships, the city will not be ready." They had already warned the council. But the leaders seemed divided. Some wanted to prepare for battle, while others believed that avoiding a show of force would reduce the chance of conflict. Rian had seen enough fights to know that waiting too long was often worse than acting too early. Lura's tail stilled for a moment. "There's a place where the signal is strongest. It is high on the cliffs near the sea. If we go there, we might Learn more before they arrive. The decision came quickly. They packed light, carrying only scanning tools and a small communication set. The path to the cliffs was steep and narrow, winding between sharp rocks and patches of glowing moss that lit their way. The sound of the waves below mixed with the distant hum of the city far behind them. At the top, the air was different. It was colder, sharper, and filled with a faint electric feeling that made the hair on Ryan's arms rise. Lura raised the scanner, its screen glowing with shifting lines. Her tail rose straight, then twitched twice. "It is here," she whispered. They moved carefully along the ridge until they found a smooth circle carved into the rock. In the center stood a thin tower of black metal, no higher than Ryan's chest, pulsing with faint light. The signal was coming from this. Ryan crouched beside it, running his hand near the surface. It was cold, too cold for something exposed to the open air. "This is not just a beacon," he said. "It might be a guide for landing." Lura's tail lashed sharply. "Then we must stop it." But as she reached forward, a sudden burst of light shot upward from the tower. A column of blue energy raced into the sky. Vanishing into the clouds, Ryan grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "It has already sent the message," he said. The two of them stared upward. Somewhere far above, a response might already be on its way. Back in the city, the council was slow to react, but the evidence from Ryan and Lura's scan forced them to act. Patrol ships began moving to higher orbit, and warning systems were set to full alert. Yet Ryan could not shake the feeling that they were still behind. If the attackers had allies, they would not send just one or two more ships. They would come with a force meant to take control in a single strike. That night, Ryan found Lura sitting alone on the balcony again. She looked out at the horizon where the sea met the stars. Her tail was wrapped around her legs, motionless. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She glanced at him. "When I was a child, my grandmother told me a story. It was about a star that fell into the ocean and turned into a bright stone. Many wanted the stone, but the ocean kept it safe by hiding it in the deepest trench. The ones who searched in greed never returned, but the one who came with care and courage found the stone and used it to light his village for generations." Ryan leaned on the railing beside her. "You think the crystal core is our stone?" Her tail uncurled slightly. "Yes, and I think the ocean in the story is us. We must protect it until the right moment. We cannot let them take it." The next morning, they received a short message from the orbital patrol. Something had entered the system, small, fast, and moving straight toward the planet. The signal in the sky had worked. Ryan checked his pack, his mind already turning to what they would need to do next. They could not face this alone, but they might be the only ones who knew enough to guide the defense. Lura's tail flicked once. Sharply, "We go to the core," she said, and Ryan knew she was right. The fight for the crystal was about to begin. The air was heavy with tension. The sky was dark, pierced only by the bright stars far above. The city below was quiet, but inside the research tower, Ryan and Lura prepared for what could be the final battle. The crystal core rested in a protective chamber, glowing softly with a light that seemed alive. It was the heart of the city's power and knowledge. Whoever controlled the crystal controlled the future. Outside, the distant sound of engines approached. Patrol ships had spotted the incoming fleet. The unknown attackers were coming fast and in numbers. Lura's tail swayed in a slow, steady rhythm. It was the calm before the storm. Ryan checked his gear one last time, his mind steady but ready. "We have to protect the core," Lura said quietly. "If it falls, everything falls." Ryan nodded. "We fight together." The doors sealed behind them as the first alarms rang out. Red lights flashed, casting shadows across the walls. The city's defense systems activated, sending warning signals to every tower and ship. Suddenly, the chamber's monitors showed multiple figures entering the city's outer zones. The attackers moved with precision, using advanced technology to disable defenses one by one. Ryan and Lura moved quickly through the corridors, their footsteps echoing. They reached the chamber just as the attackers broke through the last barrier. The first enemy stepped inside. Tall and armored, with glowing eyes that showed no mercy, Rian raised his weapon, aiming carefully. Lura's tail flicked sharply, a sign of alertness and focus. The fight was intense. The attackers used strange weapons that fired beams of energy, but Rian and Lura worked as one, moving with speed and purpose. Lura's tail told him when danger was close and when to move, together. They pushed the attackers back, protecting the crystal core with everything they had. In the middle of the fight, a sudden explosion rocked the chamber. Dust filled the air. Rian coughed, wiping his face. "Are you okay?" Lura asked, her tail curling slightly as she moved to the side. "Yes," he said. "We must keep going." More attackers poured in, but the city's defenders had arrived. Human and alien soldiers joined the battle, their weapons firing in unison. Rian glanced at Lura. "Your tail. I can read it better now. When it moves like that, I know you're ready for anything." She smiled faintly, her tail making a slow, proud wave. "And you've learned well, together. We are stronger." The attackers began to retreat, unable to break through the combined defense. The city's lights returned to normal, and the alarms stopped later. As the city breathed again, Rian and Lura stood on the balcony. The sky was clear, and the stars shone brightly. Lura's tail wrapped gently around her legs. "You asked about Happy," she said softly. Rian smiled. "Yes." She looked at him, her eyes full of warmth. Then her tail lifted high and moved in wide, smooth arcs. It was the first time Rian had seen it move like this, free, joyful, alive. "That is Happy," she said. "Not just for me, but for all who protect what they love." Rian felt a new understanding between them, a bond stronger than words. The city was safe for now, and with trust and friendship, the future looked bright.